giving my speech over Rosa Parks. She was a civil rights activist that gave us the freedom and rights that we have today because of one movement. December 1st, 1955 was the day that changed the way that people were treated, looked at, and viewed. An African American woman started something that ended segregation forever. It was just time. There was an opportunity for me to express the way I felt about being treated in that manner. This was a quote from Rosa Parks. With the diversity issues still remaining today, it is important to spread knowledge of history that has happened to make freedom and to make where we're at today. As a future teacher, I find it very important that people know about historical figures that have fought to let us be where we are. I think that as children get older, sometimes they forget that the world never used to be like this, and they need to remember why we are where we're at today. So I'd like to talk about the history of segregation and how it changed over time. It took one woman who refused to give up her seat in the back of the bus that brought about the end of segregation. We're going to look at the life before the Rosa Parks movement. Travel was humiliating for African Americans. There were signs like this that read that this part of the bus is for a colored race. There were also signs that said this is for the white race. There were dangerous seats anywhere that they would sit. They'd have to sit on the trains in very dangerous spots. They'd have to bring their own food. The trains would not provide food for them just because of their color. And in 1905, they couldn't sit next to the white people. So this was actually the start of segregation. We're going to hear about the life of someone who changed this. So during Rosa Parks' life, she grew up in Alabama in 1913. This is actually a picture of her as a child. Her grandfather was a former slave, and while he was a slave, he would always say that he wanted to see an end to slavery and an end to segregation. She married an activist who encouraged her to work for the NAACP. She became a civil rights advocate. She did a lot of training, so she was very educated in her field of knowledge. And I got this from the Henry Ford website. Her significance is very important. So in 1955, this was the day that she sat in the middle of the bus behind white people. The bus driver ordered her to move several times, and she refused many times. This led to her being arrested. As you can see on here on my timeline, segregation was legal in 1934. 1955, she was arrested. This led to the Montgomery boycott by the blacks. So because she gave up her seat, more black people started speaking out about this problem and decided that they were going to boycott segregation. So as you can see that right after Montgomery boycott started. And other things like Martin Luther King giving his speech and freedom rides and the Civil Rights Act followed this. She actually began the end of a lot of things. It took one woman to refuse to give up her seat that brought to the end of segregation. So with ethnocentrism and diversity issues, it's important that everyone stays educated on history and why we are all equal today. A quote from her, she said, "I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear." Down here is actually the bus that Rosa Parks refused to give her seat up in, and you can still go visit that today. This is her a couple years after. There are still some racial issues in classrooms today, even after all of these things have happened. And I hope that after this speech, people can continue to talk about the importance of the past with each coming generation, and they can continue to remember why we're here today. I'd like everyone to be educated on all the historical things that have happened, and I would like them to continue to teach this in schools. Being a future teacher, I would like it to never stop. I think it's very important that people know that it only takes one person sometimes to end horrible things. So that is the life of Rosa Parks and her significance in the world today.